God has been so good to me, and I get so excited when I grab the mic, or even when I don't have the mic, when I'm on the drums, when I'm with the kids, when I walk through the doors. I know that I owe God everything. I owe God everything. I owe God everything. I owe God everything. I am nothing without God, and I know that. I know that. I realize that God is the rock on which I stand. In my hard times, in my good times, God is the rock on which I stand. You may have your seats. If this is your first time at Restore, we welcome you to this place. We welcome you to this place. We ask that you would fill out that Connect card in front of you. And by doing that, this allows us to donate meals to our local food bank. And if you've been here for a while, this month, we've partnered with Plant for Purpose. And for every 10 check-ins, this allows us to plant a tree in a place who needs trees. And you may say, man, trees, who cares, right? But 85% of impoverished people live in places that aren't urban. They aren't in the city. We see people in the city and we think, oh, what do they need a tree for? But if you think nationally, if you think globally, those trees help feed people who live off the land. They help give shade to the 90, 100-degree days around the world. So we ask that you would just check in on Facebook, on Instagram, or on Twitter. We plant with purpose. # plant a tree. Man, I mentioned that God has been so good to me, but I'll be honest with you. One thing that I struggle with is waiting. Waiting on God. Waiting in general. Just waiting. The Bible mentions wait. Blessed is the man who waits. Wait, right? Wait. But I'm like, God, it's been too long. God, I'm ready now. I'm ready to do it now, God. I'm ready. I'm struggling. I'm suffering. God, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. But God says, wait. Wait for me. Wait for me. And I'll be honest with you, when I went too early, it didn't turn out good for me. When I thought I was ready, I wasn't ready at all. But man, I just want to encourage you today, whatever you're going through, you're like, man, God, I've been in this season for a long time. I've been hurting for a long time. My heart's been broken for a long time. I feel lost from you. I feel distant from you, God, for too long. God says, wait for me. Wait for me. Wait for me. God knows time. He is beyond time. He does not live within time. Wait for God. If you would please pray with me. Jesus, we thank you so much, God, for being our cornerstone, for being our rock, for being everything that we need. God, some of us are in dark seasons. The seasons we never imagined we would be in. And God, some of us are losing hope. Some of us are ready to give up and turn back, God, but we ask that you would help us wait for you. God, we love you always. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Man, I don't know about y'all, but my voice is about shot singing out this morning. Enjoyed hearing you guys sing as well. It's so good to worship together, sing praise to God. This morning, I'm pumped to be back. I haven't spoken at Restore in 2 weeks. I was out of town one weekend, and last weekend was Father's Day, and Pastor Kevin delivered a great message. If you didn't see it, you can check it on our YouTube channel, and it's also on Facebook. Did a wonderful job. And this morning, we're going to be talking about a subject that we actually have some friends in from out of town that are a perfect illustration of that subject. We're going to continue our series. We've been going through a couple of weeks now called Life Restored. What it looks like to live the Christian life. What are the markers? What are the indicators? What are the things that we do when we are following Jesus? And this morning, I'm going to speak to you on a message called We Serve Because Saved People Serve People. We're going to be talking all about why we serve, how we serve, the different ways that we serve as a church and as individuals. But this morning, we have a bunch of friends in from out of town. You guys can see them over here on my left. We got some teenagers from South Carolina. Their first weekend of summer break, they took their time, came up here to our church. They volunteered at some of our local schools. They painted some playgrounds at 3 different local elementary schools in Portsmouth. Then they came in yesterday, and they shined our building. Cleaned, repainted some walls. I don't know that our building has been this clean since we did our grand opening. So it's really, really nice, and we appreciate them. Y'all give them a hand. They did a great job. They're heading home this morning after our 9:30 service back to Florence South Carolina. So first service after church, if you would, give them a fist bump. Let them know how much you appreciate it. And we love it when people come in and do our cleaning for us and love on our community with us. Amen? Like that's really, really good. But they took their time to come serve a church that they've never met. They don't really know any of us. And that's how they spent their weekends. And they paid a lot of tolls in the process, right? They had no idea everything's tolled around here, poor guys. So y'all pray for them. Maybe slip them a $5 on their way out to get home. But God, guys, that's what it's all about. The early church cared so much about serving each other that we find churches were serving one another who didn't even know each other a decade before. People groups that didn't get along. Gentiles took up offerings for the Hebrew church in Jerusalem, even though a decade before those churches were established, those people hated one another. Because it's not about what we do or don't have in common. It's about Jesus uniting us, and that's why we serve each other. And so this morning, I want us to take a deep look at what serving is all about, why we serve. And we'll start in the New Testament, some letters that Paul wrote, and some indications of what Christians are to be doing. And then we'll look at what Jesus said about serving and why it matters so much that we serve. And I want to make clear this morning what serving is and how it looks and what it does in our hearts and how it grows us. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 13, read with me what Paul says about being a believer, about being a Christian. He says, "You were called to freedom, brothers." Hey, guess what? If you're struggling in sin this morning, you were called to freedom over that sin. You are called to freedom. But only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh. He says, don't use freedom, don't use grace to say, well, I can do what I want, when I want, treat people how I want. I can respond in the flesh, and I can say the things that make me feel good. No, he says, no, don't use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love, serve one another. We have been freed not to just please ourselves, not just to care about ourselves. We've been freed so that we can serve each other through love. Paul said, I can do all of these gifts. I can speak eloquently. I can give to the poor. And these are things that we do when we serve. But he said, if I don't do it in love, if there is no love in my heart, I want to make very clear from the foundation of this message, my goal is not to guilt you into serving. Because if the only reason you're serving is because Pastor Mark said we should serve, you will never get what it's all about. I want to stir up within you a love for people that makes you love serving others. In Hebrews chapter 6, verse 10, it says, "For God is not unjust, so as to overlook your work and the love that you have shown for his name in serving the saints as you still do." The good news is when we serve others, even if they don't recognize it, because we've all been there. You've done something nice for someone. You paid for their meal and they take advantage of you. You are generous with your time with somebody. You are so nice in the way that you describe them and the things that you say about them, but you turn around and they're stabbing you in the back. God says, listen, when you serve other people, I notice, I remember it. I don't just forget about it, even though people do. I care. And I want us to see how Jesus used serving as an illustration, why it was so important to him. And the first thing that I see when I read through the New Testament and I read through the parables that Jesus taught, I see that serving is central to Jesus' message. Turn with me to Mark chapter 10 and verse 43. Jesus is walking with his disciples. He asks them an important question. He begins to tell them that he's going to die, and he tells them that he's going to die a difficult and horrible death, and it gets really quiet and really awkward. And one of his disciples in that moment, when it's really awkward and everybody's thinking, man, this dude's going to die, he says, hey, Jesus, could you let us sit on your right hand of the throne before you go? Could we have one more request? Could we have one more magic wish before you go? Jesus says, you guys don't get it. My kingdom is not like your kingdom. In this kingdom, everybody wants to get to the top of the pyramid. In my kingdom, it's reversed. Read with me Mark chapter 10, verse 43. He says, it shall not be so among you. He says, the Gentiles, they try to get to the top. He says, but you, whoever would be great among you must be your servant. He says, guys, you want to know how to be the top? You want to know how to be important in the kingdom? And whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. I love that he ended with to give his life. Because some of us are like, yeah, man, I'm serving just like Jesus. I opened 4 doors this morning for somebody and they didn't say thank you. I was at kids check-in this morning and you wouldn't believe this kid spit up on me. Pastor Mark, I got here really early. I want you to understand, guys, it's not just about the things we do right now. It's about a life of serving. Jesus said to be great in the kingdom is not just to do a one-off, to buy someone's meal, to endure a little bit of persecution. It's to serve. I came to serve. I came to give my life a ransom for many. The picture that Jesus is pointing is kind of like a reverse pyramid. We think that we accomplish something when we get to the top, and there are thousands of people under us in our company. Hundreds of people who look up to us in our church. Jesus says, no, the way that you arrive in the kingdom is when you get to the bottom. And you have dozens of people that you support and you care for and you love and you're generous to and that you serve. You have dozens and hundreds of people that you're responsible for serving. And this is why it makes such a difference when you begin serving others. I think of the people I just mentioned, the people who open doors. You know, sometimes they will open doors for 50, 60, 70 people come through the back door. 50, 60, 70 people come through the front door. Those are dozens of people they're serving. I think of our kids leaders every week. They're in there serving kids, loving on kids, telling them about Jesus, playing games with them, getting down on their level, helping them understand the basics of the faith. And they'll tell you the greatest benefit of being in kids is when a kid gives you a hug and says, man, I love hanging out with you. I love hearing about Jesus. I love when you share with me what the gospel is all about. Jesus made central to his teaching that this idea of serving was what we were created to do. I believe with all my heart that there's a reason all of us enjoy doing good things. It's because God created us for a relationship with him, but he also created us to serve others. You were created to do this. You're a tool that was fashioned and made to do this job. And so when we're used to do that, when we use our lives to do what matters most, we feel useful, we feel purposeful, we feel like there's a plan. But when we begin to use our life for ourselves, and that selfish feeling sets in, and we get what we want, and we only care about ourselves, emptiness, struggle, discouragement begins to set in. We live in a country that is wealthy. We have so many resources at our disposal, and yet we're depressed, we're discouraged. We are a sad nation at best, divided at the core, because we weren't created to just have. We were created to serve, to care for others, to love other people. But then in John chapter 12, I want you to see the earliest indication of a follower of Jesus really getting it. There's a dinner that's going to take place, and at this dinner, really only two people are going to know what's going on. Jesus is a wanted man. The Pharisees are trying to arrest him and kill him. And so there's a dinner thrown. It's a party. It's a good party. We get an indication from the verses. Read with me John chapter 12, beginning of verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was. Remember Lazarus? He raised him from the dead. I don't know about y'all, but if somebody raised me from the dead, I'd be throwing a really good party for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to have a good feast. I'm getting out the best steak. I'm going to feed them a great meal, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. His family is pumped. Jesus, we thank you so much. Mary and Martha, his sisters, are there. So they gave him a dinner. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Lazarus kind of gets what life is all about now. You know what I'm saying? He's just chilling and happy to be back, happy to be alive. Next verse. Mary, therefore. There's only two people at this table that know that Jesus is about to die. From what we can tell, Judas has figured it out, and Mary has figured it out. The other disciples are still kind of confused. Everything's vague, unclear. But Mary and Judas have discovered this thing's coming to an end. And it's funny, they have the same information, but it leads them to do two very different things. Mary took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. This nard was so expensive that it would be about the value of a year's worth of common workers' wages. So if you say $10 an hour, it's to be a $20,000 gift she's giving. She pours it out. The moment that box is broken, there's no undoing it. The reason this nard is so expensive is because back then, like today, funeral homes, people who deal in the death of loved ones, realized that funerals can be expensive and people are often willing to pay more than something costs because they want to honor and celebrate their loved one. So the market for this nard that people use to anoint their dead and to put a nice fragrance on the grave, was very expensive. We don't have any indication that Mary was a particularly wealthy woman. She saved a long time. This was likely the most expensive thing she owned. And when she broke that box, all of the value poured out. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Every moment that fragrance grew in that house, something else was noticeable. Not just the smell, but the awkward moment. The disciples didn't get it, and Judas didn't like it. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, this is one of the accounts that is mentioned in all 4 Gospels, and in 2 of them it is indicated that Judas, immediately after this episode, he goes and he sells Jesus out. Like he's had it. Judas said, "Why was the ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" Jesus, I thought we wanted to serve others. Notice verse 6. John knows at this point, later writing this all down, what Judas is and who he has become. He said this not because he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used it to help himself to what was put into it. Judas was so trusted by the disciples. He had them so fooled that when they decided who would care for the money, they said, not Peter. Oh, certainly not Thomas. Judas. They all had a healthy respect for Judas, a love for him, and a trust in him. But in this moment, he knows Jesus is about to die, and he's getting a little nervous, and he's beginning to wonder if he should cash out before this thing goes bankrupt. Mary does the opposite. She goes all in. She breaks what is likely her most valuable possession. Jesus responds in verse 7. Jesus said, "Leave her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial." I want you to understand, Mary knew the day of his burial was coming. And we know from the Gospels that when Jesus was buried and all the disciples abandoned him, Mary was at his grave. And I believe she was holding this little box. Whatever ointment was left in it, she was ready to anoint his body. She knew what was coming. For the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me. Jesus knew what was taking place. In most of the gospel accounts, Jesus goes on to say, whatever you've just seen will be preached wherever the gospel is preached. Here's what I want you to know about serving from this story. Serving will cost you something. For Mary, this was a big decision. For Judas, it was too much. He said, "I'm out. This is my line. 2 years on the road with some smelly guys, I can do that. Missions trips, he's all over it, all right? He's out there. He's holding the money. He's paying for the hotels." But this is where he draws the line. He says, "No, that's wasteful. I can't do that." Serving will cost you something. For some of you, it costs you your time. You got here early. For some of you, it's going to mean helping people that you wish they could just figure out how to help themselves. I find it interesting that most people I run into know how to fix everyone else's problems. You know who I'm talking about. Republicans and Democrats know how to fix this country, but certainly both have problems within their own party. Everybody I run into knows how to fix the community they live in, but they have personal problems they can't seem to overcome. I have yet to meet a church member or somebody who attends church, whether they're a Christian or a non-believer, who wasn't quick to tell me what the church should be doing. Everybody has an opinion, but all of us struggle with what we should be doing on an individual basis. It cost her something. The cost was too high for Judas, but Jesus commended her. He said, wherever the gospel is preached, this story will be shared. And it has been over and over and over. Then turn with me to Matthew chapter 25. I want you to see who it is that we're serving. Because here's what I hear sometimes from Christians. I would serve, but people don't appreciate it. People need to help themselves. Those people have problems. I would serve, but I don't ever see a return on the investment. Jesus is going to share a parable. He's going to share a story with them of what it's going to be like when everything is right, every wrong is righted, every account is taken into account, and everything is weighed and justified, and real justice comes. And so he says in Matthew chapter 25, beginning in verse 31, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, it's like when this is all over, when everything is settled, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He says there will be a line, and we will separate who is on this side and who is on that side. Verse 33, and he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. This is what we all want to hear. He goes on, for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Can I make this side note here? Some of you have people on that list that you're okay with, and some of you have people on that list that you would never help. Some of us have decided that there are people on that list who deserve to be on that list, and others should not be on that list. They should know better. They're not my problem. Jesus says, you did these things for me. And the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, saying, truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. If Jesus knocked on your door and asked for a meal, you'd fix him the best meal. If he stumbled into this building thirsty, you'd do your best to be the one that hands him a cup of cold water. If he came into your home needing clothes, you'd give him the best clothes you have. And he said, here's the good news. You will not run into me, but as much as you do for the least of these my brothers, when our fellow man is in need and you do these things, when you serve them, you do it for me. I want you to understand, third, we honor Jesus when we serve others. Not just people who can help us. A lot of us want to serve the upper middle class. People who look like us, dress like us, think like us, vote like us. A lot of us want to serve people who can give us something in return. We want to serve them as long as they're helping us. Jesus gave us a list of people to serve who could not return the favor. This is why it's so important that we serve people who don't look like us, who don't think like us, who aren't just the same as us. Make no mistake about it. There is a reason that our church is on the corner that it's on. We've got the shipyard in front of us. We have government housing behind us. Go a few blocks up. You've got a historic district with beautiful homes. Go a few blocks in a different direction. You've got roofs that need to be replaced and broken windows. Jesus calls us to serve our community, not just the part of the community that we're familiar with. Some of you are way more comfortable in Old Town than you are on Southside Gardens. Some of us are way more comfortable in Southside Gardens than we are talking to people in Old Town. Jesus calls us to serve. I said, Mark, what does that look like? I want to be practical this morning. I want you to love people enough to serve them, but then we need to figure out, how do we do that? What does that look like? This week we had these teenagers here, and on Thursday night, Terry came in and shared a story with them, a story that I know well and that I love hearing. I've heard it a dozen times. Most of you know Terry didn't grow up in church, just wasn't on his radar. Grew up his whole life in Portsmouth, never went to church. Here and there he might go to a VBS or something or an event. He knew of church, but he didn't go. He got married to Jenny, and Jenny wanted him in church, and so she'd say, we need to go to church. And she'd say, we should go to church. And they'd try church, and Terry wouldn't like the looks he would get because Terry has tattoos, and Terry's a biker, and Terry Dressed up for him is a t-shirt that's really clean. You know what I'm saying? He's just a dude's dude. You know what I'm saying? And our church was about to start. And Jenny got a flyer in the mail and she said, Terry, I think we need to go to church. And he said, we've been to church. I don't like church. Nobody gets me at church. And then she saw one of our billboards and she said, Terry, I've seen a sign. And Terry said, that's called a billboard, not a sign. But it was too late. He already knew. Terry dragged his feet that morning, and I give him a hard time because he's come a long way. He made her drive him to church. You know what I'm saying? And some of you dudes know exactly what I'm talking about when you don't want to go somewhere. And they got there that morning, and God had orchestrated it. Before Terry came into the Sports Hall of Fame where our church started, he ran into David Kronberg on the corner. David was out there welcoming people near the flags. David had just sold Terry a motorcycle part. And David used to attend our church. He lives in Nebraska now. He's a big guy, 6'4", motorcycle man to the core, tattooed up, and he was wearing a t-shirt that had his motorcycle gang, Christian motorcycle club, however you want to call it, whatever, on his shirt. And Terry said, I know you. And Terry said in that moment, his guard just dropped. See, David was serving that day on our greeter team, outside welcoming people in. Terry said, okay, all right. He came in. And he said, somebody opened the door for me, and they were so nice. And then somebody showed us where to go. Our church was in the back of the Sports Hall of Fame, and he said, every corner we turned, there was more people. And they weren't like avoiding me. They weren't like looking weird at me. They were like genuinely nice to me. That was our guest services team, and they were serving that day. And they didn't know it, but God was using Jenny's invite. God was using David at the corner. He was using these serve team members all along the way to let Terry's guard down. They got in there and the worship team got on stage. And Terry had been to church before and he's like, the musicians actually wanted to be there. Like they had a smile on their face. They were really excited when they sang. And I believe like they were actually meaning what they were saying. Like these were genuine people. See, they didn't know who Terry was that day, but Terry was watching them. Terry didn't get saved that day. He didn't get saved that month. But he said, Jenny, I like that. That was really nice. I enjoyed that. Let's go back. And Jenny was so excited. So they kept coming back. And Terry kept being amazed that all these people who would set up and tear down, who would serve so that we could have church. And 12 weeks later, he grabbed Kevin and he said, I need to talk to you. I need a relationship with God. And he got saved. Now, Kevin prayed with him. I was there. I just watched. I didn't do anything. But Kevin played a role. David played a role. The worship team played a role. The guest services team played a role. Everybody that greeted him that morning played a role. You guys understand that when we serve, we don't always get to see the blessings and the benefits, the fruit that comes about because of what we do. Some of you have been inviting a neighbor for so long, you've wondered if it's worth it. You've wondered if it's falling on deaf ears. God is using you when you do what he's asking you to do to make a difference, even if we don't see it all at once. So this morning, I want to invite you to make a difference in our church, in our city, and in our world. We're a very simple church. We don't believe in having thousands of ministries that need 15 leaders each with 4 meetings a week to decide what they're going to do with their time and their resources. That's not how we operate. We've never been that way. We have a select few ministries that we do, and we try to do really well. So if you're here this morning, and you're a believer, and you want to make a difference, and you want to get involved at Restore, you know for all these years, we've made it very clear what Life Track is and what that looks like. Maybe you've already been through Life Track, but you've never really joined a team. All of you know who Pastor Kevin is. He'll be taking the stage here in a few minutes. But after service this morning, after this service and after the second service, Pastor Kevin's going to be hanging out in the Life Track room. He's going to have some team leaders in there. And I want to encourage you, if you've never had the privilege of serving, to stop in there, introduce yourself. Maybe to a team leader, maybe to Pastor Kevin. He'll have a list of all of our teams. Maybe some of you are like me and you don't have any like really good gifts, but you're like, I could do a couple different things okay. Where do you need me? And you're like, hey, whatever you need, I'm there. Or maybe some of you, you're specialists, like you're snipers. You're like, man, I do one thing really, 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 really well, and you know what it is. and you're like, how can we use this? Pastor Kevin and our team leaders would love nothing more than to help you figure out how you can serve and make a difference in this church as well as in this community. So this morning, we're going to close a little bit differently. We're going to have individuals up front on my left and on my right. And if you need to pray with somebody, if you need to really talk to somebody about your relationship with God, I invite you to come forward. But if you're here this morning and there's an area, there's a line in your life that you said, that's my line. I don't know about serving. We have teams that are easy to join. We have teams that are hard to join. You got to be a spiritual leader to lead a group. We want to make sure that you're healthy. Because if you try to lead others and you're not healthy, guess what? You're going to get even more unhealthy when you're dealing with everyone else's problems and you have their spiritual weight on your shoulders. Let me say this. Serving isn't just about getting stuff done. I said this last time we talked about this topic, and I mean it with all my heart. I don't need you to serve so we can get stuff done. You need to serve because you were created to do it. Story after story of people who go through Life Track, find a team, and they say, man, I am so glad I'm on kids. I thought that it was going to be like this thing where I'm just like chasing kids around, but those kids love coming in and learning about God, and those kids ask the best questions that make me like dig into the Word, and they force me to grow. Serving is where you really begin to develop as a believer, begin to grow, and begin to find that purpose, that plan that God always created you for. And something as simple as welcoming people into the parking lot, helping follow up with our guests, maybe coming in during the week, helping with our follow-up team, or helping on a Sunday with our guest services team. Maybe you're not an upfront person. You like computers and you could be on AV, but you don't ever want a microphone. God has gifted you. And my question to you would be this. Jesus said, as much as you did this for the least of these, people who can't return the favor. I want to make this clear. As a church, we often serve people who can never return the favor. That is the gospel. I can never do enough, pray enough, give enough, serve enough to return the favor that Jesus has given me. But you know what? Jesus made clear, saved people, they serve people. You know why, right? Because they love people. You say, Mark, I don't love people. Then let me tell you this. Let me put it this way. It's really simple, really clear. You say, Mark, I don't have a love for the homeless. I want to, but I don't have it. Then I would tell you right now what you need to do. You need to sign up for the next time we serve at Oasis. You need to be there, and you need to serve them a meal. You need to do it. It'll be good for your heart. You need to keep going back until you can find a love for those people, till you can see them in their humanity, and you can stop assuming what they are or what they're doing or who they're about. You say, Mark, I don't have a love for this people group. You need to start serving that people group. Mark, I don't have a love for people who don't know God. I think everybody should be a Christian. You need to join guest services and start meeting some people who have found their way into a church for the first time in 20 years, and they're nervous or afraid, like Terry, think everyone is going to judge them. You need to see the world through their eyes and fall in love with them as God loves them, and see that God has a plan for them. And God's plan is to use you to love them, to serve them, and to change their life. I wonder this morning how God could use you to change your neighbors, change your neighborhood, change your community, change your life, and the lives of those around you. Can we pray together?